Good evening, warm welcome to everybody. My name is Erik Franken. I work for the Koerdisch Instituut in Brussels and I will be your host for this evening. Thank you for joining. This is our third session of in total 6 webinars concerning the unique society model in the autonomous administration of North and East Syria, a region that is also known as Rojava. Now, similar to the 2 previous sessions we already had, we will be confronted with a mixed audience. It's going to be people speaking English, Dutch, and also some people speaking French. But because of our invited speakers, I think you will agree that for this evening, the major part of this session will be in English. So before welcoming and introducing our speakers, let me first welcome our participants, especially in Dutch, because that's the majority. Goedenavond, iedereen welkom. Mijn naam is Erik Franken en ik ben de stafmedewerker voor het Koerdisch Instituut, of een van. We zijn deze avond aan onze derde informatiesessie over Rojava, dus de autonome regio van Noord- en Oost-Syrië. Nu, voor de Nederlandstaligen onder de deelnemers spijt het me te moeten stellen dat ook deze avond in hoofdzaak het in Engels zal doorgaan. En dat heeft natuurlijk alles te maken met onze sprekers die zich hebben aangemeld. Waar we ook heel blij over zijn uiteraard dat die zich bereidwillig hebben verklaard om deel te nemen. Maar laat eens iets weten van zodra er iets is dat u niet zou begrijpen omwille van de taal. Dan zal ik zeker mijn best doen om dat beknopt voor u te vertalen. Nu, het doel van de sessie is dat het heel interactief wordt, uiteraard. Dat was met de vorige sessies ook zo, daar was ik heel blij om, of dat was het Koerdisch Instituut heel blij om. En dat alle inbreng vanwege jullie als deelnemer dus uiteraard meer dan welkom is. Jullie commentaren, jullie opmerkingen en uiteraard ook jullie vragen. En daarvoor is dan een functie voorzien in, we werken met Zoom. En Zoom heeft zo'n functie, dat is raise hand. Jullie kunnen dat dan doen en dan geef ik jullie onmiddellijk het woord. Bovendien krijgen we ook de kans om nog deze informatiesessie terug te bekijken, want we nemen die volledig op en zullen de video ook publiceren op onze website. In totaal hebben wij voor deze hier ongeveer 1:30 voorzien vanwille het aantal sprekers. Nu, het is geen probleem als het iets of wat uitloopt. We gaan dat proberen van niet te lang te laten uitlopen natuurlijk, maar als het interactief wordt, dan zou ik zeggen laat het maar komen uiteraard. Hè. Okay, so coming back to English, the idea of this webinar is that it becomes interactive and that participants can share their ideas, provide comments, ask questions with the speakers on the topic of this evening. Now, for this purpose, there is this famous function in Zoom, the application we work with. You can raise hand. As from that moment, I will enable your microphone. Well, it is any way you can enable it yourself, and you will be able to speak and ask your question, of course. In other words, you don't have to use the chat function. I will try to check the chat function, but that, as a host, it's not always simple. Please note that we record this webinar this evening, and as we did also with the previous 2. And it will be published afterwards on our website. And when I look, and that is a good thing to say, when I look at the statistics of our YouTube page, now it pleases us that quite some people are reviewing the recorded webinars. So that's a good thing. It means that other people are eager to see what has been recorded. And that's good. That's nice to hear and to see. We planned approximately 1:30 for this session, but if the session takes a little bit longer due to the fact that it becomes interactive, please be our guest, we really don't care. Now, so far for the practical details, which brings me to the 2 speakers for this evening, Mr. Kino Gabriel and Mr. Muhammad Hassan. For the third speaker, the information that I received concerning him, Mr. Abdul Qadir, is that he will not be able to join us this evening. If he does anyway, and then if that is the case, if he doesn't, I'm convinced anyway that we're going to make it a very exciting evening and webinar this evening for sure. So the 2 speakers, Mr. Muhammad Hassan, I will all start with introduce both people. Mr. Hassan is a Kurd and a member of the Administrative Committee of Foreign Relations Department in the Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria. And Mr. Kino Gabriel, he's an Assyrian and spokesperson of the Syrian Democratic Forces, commander with also commander, in fact, with the Syriac Military Council. So welcome to you both, and a big thank you for your participation. You are both participating from North Syria. I can imagine that's quite a distance, so I sincerely hope that technology will not let us down and that the communication runs smoothly. Now, before I leave the floor to the speakers, I will, my screen is still shared with you, so I will provide you some background information on the demographics of North Syria. A major part of the information that I will show you comes from the so-called Rojava Information Center. There's a website with a lot of information and details on Northeast Syria. It is built by volunteers, an organization based on volunteers, I would call it. So let's go further on. This is a map. And when looking at this map, it's just to situate once more and to refresh everybody's mind on how it is situated. When you see the countries Syria, Iraq, Syria, then the northern of Syria, Rojava region where we're talking about, you see Afrin on the left side, and unfortunately that is the part that has been invaded by Turkey in 2018 and still occupied. And then you have this part of northern Syria with the different regions. The next map shows us, in fact, the situation as from 2018. After the Turkish invasion of Afrin, the autonomous administration was created with 7 regions, and that you can see on this map, of course. The Turkish occupation in Afrin caused that over 300,000 people were displaced, and the majority of them are Kurdish. When it comes to the demographics, it needs to be mentioned that Rojava knows a wide range of ethnic and religious groups. On one hand, you have Kurdish and Arab majority regions. Next, the ethnic spread can vary, in fact, from city to city with several minorities, Armenians, Turkmen, and Assyrians. And of course, other minorities also, such as Yazidi people, Circassians, and Chechens, and even nomadic Don people. A lot of information that I will not go too far in detail, but where we can talk about if necessary. And then this map, oh sorry, this is going too fast. So this map, in fact, provides a visualization, you could call it, of the demographic situation. The green part shows us where the majority of Arabic areas are situated. In yellow, you can detect the areas with a majority of Kurdish people. In the northeast, you will have a strong presence, as you can see, of Assyrian Christians. And the other symbols that you see throughout Rojava indicate the presence of the different minorities. You name them: Yazidi, Turkmen, Armenians, Alevi, and so on. Some few other facts. There are several religions present in the northeast of Syria. You have Islam, with mainly those are Sunni, Alevi, and so on. Then you have Christianity, Judaism, and Yazidi. And Yazidi is, you could call it one of the oldest religions of the region. And then, the speakers will correct me, but I think we can talk about 3 official languages, which is the Kurdish Kurmanji, Arabic, and the Syrian Arabic. And the multi-ethnic and religious diversity, the core ideas are for Northeast Syria, for what I've read about it, and for what the core ideas of in terms of the new paradigm and the new way of thinking in Northeast Syria. The initial idea is that the Kurdish people should not seek to establish a state of their own, but should instead fight for a political system and then embrace cultural and political rights of all people living in the region. So basically the goal is to create a democratic nation where all identities should be given the space to organize themselves and be represented at every level of the decision making. And now, before I leave the floor to the speakers, there's one more slide with a nice saying that I found also on the website of Rojava Information Center, and it comes with some words coming from Arifa Bekir, who was co-chair of the Social Affairs Commission in the Afrin region, saying that a democratic system is the future for Syria. In order to achieve stability, this must include Arab people, Armenian, Turkmen, Kurds, you name it. Everyone must live together in brotherhood so that wars, conflicts, and the killings which are going on may come to an end. And that would be a nice start now to go and to give the floor to our speakers. Mr. Hassan, you are Kurdish and Mr. Gabriel is Assyrian. So Mr. Hassan, forgive me when I start to give the word to the minority, maybe I would say it, and start with Mr. Gabriel, if you don't mind.
No, for sure.
That's nice, thank you. Mr. Gabriel, as an Assyrian and a Christian, well, I will leave the floor to you, but with already some questions from my part, how do the minorities feel in the current system and the society model of Rojava? Do the minorities feel that they have enough rights to participate? Do they feel safe? So what might be the challenges? Please, I leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much for hosting us here and for this session. I think I hope to be helpful in presenting some ideas and give some information regarding the situation that we have here in North and East Syria. So basically, I want to mention that we don't like for us to be called minorities. Basically, as a Syrian group in Syria, we are not minorities. We are almost 10% of the Syrian population. Of course, it differs, and we are divided into all different regions within Syria. So maybe in each area we are a little bit less numbered than the other groups, and that is for the current situation. But going back to to the 1950s, the Syriac and the Christian community within Syria was at least 20 to 25% of the population, but made or run by the different Syrian regimes. Our numbers decreased over time, and during the last few decades, we have lost almost 60 to 70% of our population from within Syria. So that is why we don't like to be called minorities, and that is for start. And the second is that the idea of the democratic nation doesn't have minorities and majorities. So basically, all groups are or should be represented in every level, in their unique situation, etc. So basically, that is what we started the democratic administration of Jazeera first back in 2014, and later the democratic administration of North and East Syria back in 2019. So through that time, I think a lot of matters have changed. As Syriac, I am proud that I have been part of the establishment and the creation of the democratic administration of North and East Syria, or basically the Jazeera, back in 2014. And I took part in the first groups who were discussing the different committees, the social contract of the administration, the elections that took place later, etc. So I was part of this process, and I am proud to be part of it. And I think basically the idea that the administration started with was the collaboration of different ethnic groups working together, and basically those who share this idea of mutual future, mutual presence and mutual future. They work together and they reached the agreement, basically the social contract of the administration, in order to create it, and from there we started working together. Basically, the first administration was created on the idea of different representatives of each committee, each level of administration, whether it was the executive branch or the, let's say, judicial branch, or even the legislative branch. So we always had a president. Was basically at the beginning we had an official or representatives of each division and two people assisting him. Whenever one of them was, let's say, Arab, the other two assisting him were Kurdish or Syriac, and when one of them is Kurdish, the others would be Arab and Syriac, and etc. When the official representing the department is Syriac, his assistants would be Kurdish and Arab. So basically, that was something not written within the social contract, but it was worked on within the administration in general. Of course, it developed through time. Basically, within the social contract, the Syriac community had, let's say, a positive link to have at least, no matter what the result of the election is, it will have at least 10% representation within the legislative committee or the legislative council, and also the same goes for the other administrations, and that was due to the special, let's say, special circumstances that the Syriac community went through during the last century, basically. So starting from 1915, during the genocide that was done by the Ottoman Empire over the Armenians, over the Syriacs, and over the Greek community within the Ottoman Empire, our numbers started to decrease, and they continued to do that with policies done by the different regimes in the area, and one of them were the Syrian regimes here, starting from almost 1915. Sorry, 1950. So going back to the administration, I think the representation of the different ethnic groups, whether it was the Syriac, the Arabs, the Kurds, and all of them being together within one committee or one branch of the administration, eventually led to more understanding of each other and more ability to go beyond the, let's say, problems that we were facing against each other before, and allowed us to, let's say, have a new vision about what we have at the current moment and what can we have for the future eventually, if this project eventually succeeded and worked. And that was our, let's say, vision for the administration, to be a model for the solution for the Syrian conflict, where basically it depends on each demographic, let's say, diversity within each area, administrating and governing over themselves. And we saw this as a solution for a lot of problems that even other geographic areas within Syria are facing. So we have the southern area where we have also Druze, Christians, let's say Arabs, Syriacs, I don't know, other groups. Again, in the Aleppo region, we have different ethnic and religious groups: Armenians, Syriacs, Arabs, Kurds, I don't know, several other groups. The same goes for the Syrian coast and the, let's say, Homs and Damascus, and almost each area of Syria have its own diversity and its own demographic situation. So this idea of the self-administration, I think, was a model and can be implemented within those areas, and eventually it is going to be to provide a solution for some problems that they are facing. I think lot of or some of those stuff eventually started to change when the administration started to expand beyond the initial creation back in 2014, where we had the Jazeera region, Kobani and Afrin, and later back in 2016 we managed to liberate Manbij, and let's say a civilian council was created and we joined the administration, and eventually later back in 2018 and 19 also other areas were liberated from ISIS like Raqqa, Tal Abyad, Deir ez-Zor, and almost each one of them, or let's say new administrations and civil councils were created, and eventually they joined together, all different 7 administration joined together to create the administration of North and East Syria. So this, I think, new administration or new situation eventually led to have each area or each region has its own administration, its own legislative council, its own executive council. Again, in some areas, the Syriac community is represented in a very, let's say, higher level, especially in Jazeera, where we have better demographic presence. And in others, I think it's just a matter of representation, because the majority of the Syriac community and the Christian community have already or is already taking refuge or is displaced in other parts of Syria or outside Syria. So we have Tal Abyad, we have Kobani, we have Raqqa, where we don't have the same amount of demographic representation as we had before 2010. And this led to just some Syriac or Christian people being present and represented in those administrations respectively. So eventually, I think it's just a representation of this community. Back into the, going back to the administration of North and East Syria in general, which let's say, which is an umbrella for all 7 administrations and regions. Again, the Syriac community is represented. We have either, let's say, officials or assistants of the different committees or bodies that form the administration, and also we have some people who are, let's say, we have the head of the legislative or the general council, which is the legislative council, is a Syriac woman, and also the other bodies and, let's say, committees of the administration. So I think it's safe to say that with all these differences and changes that happened to the administration and with the procurement, let's say, of the work and the social contract, I think with the time and with the years, we faced some problems regarding the experience that we have, and I think it was something that it got the attention of the different parties and organizations who are involved with the administration. So I think basically last year we had a conference for the people of Euphrates, for Jazeera and Euphrates, which involved all the people living in North and East Syria, representatives of tribes leaders, we had religious leaders, we had organizations, parties, etc. And all have come to the conclusion that there is a necessity to change or to create change within the administration in order for it to fit in a better way the current situation that we have, and to fix some of the problems that we faced during the last basically 7 years of the administration, and some of them are related to the inclusivity of the administration. So basically, in some parts we had an over-representation of the Kurds, and in some parts we had an maybe representation of the Arabs. And in general, I think the problem with the inclusivity was not regarding the representation by itself, but I think it was a problem with the inclusivity of the decision-making within the bodies and committees of the administration of North and Syria in general. So I think there was some solutions presented in order to find or to change this reality and to correct it into a better one. And I think some committees were formed to follow up those decisions that were taken within the conference of Al Jazeera and Euphrates people. And I think basically those committees, I think they chose General Mazloum Kobani or Mazloum Abdi, sorry, for their overall representation, and to follow with those committees the changes that are needed for the administration to be taking, and eventually to have an election in I think 12 months period. So hopefully, I think at the end of 2021 or 2021 and or at the beginning of 2022, we are going to see an election within the administration of North and East Syria, and the people are going to choose their representatives from the administration, and hopefully those mechanisms of the administration are going to change accordingly with the new social contract that is going to be changed in order for it to fit the new circumstances, the new ideas, and the new reality that we are seeing within the administration. But again, I think at the end of all of those changes and etc., the basic thing of the administration is that it represents the different ethnic and religious groups, and I think that is a basic part of the social contract, and that is going to be taken to the new one also. The recognition of the different ethnic and religious groups living in the area, I think, is a basic part of the social contract, which is also a demand from the administration, from the, let's say, constitutional committee that was working on a new constitution for Syria, or it's a demand from the administration for any constitution for Syria to have a recognition of the different ethnic and religious groups who are living in Syria. And eventually, I think, for me not to take it any longer than that, I think I will leave it for the listeners if they have any specific questions or information that want us to focus on it. I'll be happy to answer those questions. But eventually, I think the basic is we have 3 basic groups living in Syria, which are the Arabs, Kurds, and also other groups in different relative numbers, including the Armenians, the Yazidis, the Chechens, and others, of course. And basically, the administration has an official or 3 official languages which are used in different places within the administration itself, within official publications, within the educational system, but again in different levels due to the ability to provide it and to teach it or something else. And eventually those are stuff that we see needed for the future of Syria to have a basis for any political solution for Syria. Thank you very much, and I hope I was helpful with those information that I provided.
It was quite clear and very helpful. Thank you very much. And I can assure you, I immediately have a few questions, but I will not do that. Then I will leave maybe first the word to Mr. Hassan, of course, and then we will open the door for a lot of questions. Thanks again, and I come back to you with those questions. And Mr. Hassan, I of course immediately an opener for you and a similar question as I asked Mr. Gabriel. So as a member, you as of the Administrative Committee in Northeast Syria, how do you consider the situation? And I will not call them minorities anymore, but rather ethnic groups and cultures. So how is the living together without issues or challenges? And if there are challenges, what are they?
Thank you very much, dear Eric. First of all, I would like to thank the Koerdisch Instituut in Brussels for organizing this webinar and for giving me this opportunity to talk about this important issue. Of course, first I agree with my colleague Kino. Actually, in our project, we don't call, we don't use the concept minorities and majority, because we believe in democratic nation, and we believe that all ethnic and religious groups are essential parts in the fabric of our society. So we have abolished using the term majority and minority, and I here agree with my friend and colleague Kino. I would like to begin by giving a brief background on how the Autonomous Administration project started in Rojava and north and east of Syria. And for the audience, the distinction between Rojava and north and east of Syria, Rojava, we mean by Rojava the three main Kurdish regions of Kobani, Jazeera, and Afrin, while north and east of Syria encompasses the other Arabic regions, Manbij, Tabqa, Deir ez-Zor, and Raqqa, which were liberated from ISIS thanks to the SDF, when they launched the campaign to liberate those regions from ISIS. So to go back to our topic, I would like just to begin by giving a brief background on this issue. The Syrian people have lived more than 5 decades under the rule of Al-Ba'ath Party and the Assad regime, during which they have suffered all forms of oppression and were deprived of their basic rights and liberties. The Kurds in particular were subjected to the worst policies of discrimination and the human rights violations. Their lands were appropriated and redistributed to Arab settlers who were brought by the Syrian government in 1960s from different parts of Syria to create the so-called Arab Belt along the border with Turkey to disconnect the Kurds on both sides of the border and to impose a demographic change in the Kurdish regions. During the rule of the Syrian regime, the Kurdish region was the poorest in terms of services and infrastructure, despite the fact that this region is the richest in oil and natural resources, as well as in agriculture. The Syrian regime also provoked ethnic and religious conflicts in Rojava to be able to control the region, following the well-known policy divide and rule. In March 2011, peaceful demonstrations started in Syria, demanding democratic transformation, freedom, and equality, inspired by the popular movements in some Arab countries known as Arab Spring. Soon, what was known as the Syrian Revolution deviated from its peaceful track due to the intervention of some regional countries, mainly Turkey, which began to support radical terrorist groups such as ISIS and Al-Nusra Front. The Kurdish movement in Rojava assessed the political and military landscape in Syria, and it chose to distance itself from the Turkish-backed Syrian opposition, which provoked sectarian divisions and supported the terrorist organizations. It began to build a model of governance that embraces the values of democracy, plurality, gender equality, and environmental sustainability. In 2014, the autonomous administrations were declared in the 3 Kurdish cantons of Jazeera, Kobani, and Afrin. A social contract was drafted that includes the principles upon which the autonomous regions would be based. The preamble of the social contract states that the Arabs, Kurds, Syriacs, Chaldeans, Armenians, by their free will, declare this contract to achieve justice, freedom, and democracy in accordance with the principles of ecological balance and equality without discrimination based on race, religion, belief, and gender. The goal of this contract is to enable the political and moral fabric of the democratic society to achieve its functions, which are mutual understanding, coexistence within pluralism, respect people's rights for self-determination, the rights of women and the children, self-protection and defense, and respect for freedom of religion and belief. Given that this project adopts principles that are different from the mainstream political tendencies in many regional countries of the Middle East, it was targeted and confronted with real threats. As the regional countries whose political systems are based either on nationalism or sectarianism or both did not want to see a democratic, inclusive, and tolerant model of governance that represents the antithesis of their political system. Soon after the declaration of the autonomous regions, the Turkish government mobilized the terrorist jihadi groups such as ISIS and al-Nusra to attack the 3 Kurdish cantons. The Kurdish forces, the People's Protection Units, YPG, and Women's Protection Forces, YPJ, played a key role in defending the Kurdish regions, especially in Kobani, which saw the heaviest battles against the terrorist organization of ISIS. The heroic resistance of Kobani drew the attention of the world and gained respect and sympathy worldwide. The US led a coalition of countries and began to coordinate with the local Kurdish forces on the ground to defeat ISIS, which posed a serious threat on the entire humanity. With the expansion of the fight against ISIS and the liberation of Arab cities, a lot of Arab youth joined the Kurdish forces in their fight against ISIS. The Kurdish military forces created a new military structure to accommodate and organize the Arab fighters who joined the fight against ISIS to liberate their regions. On October the 10th, 2015, the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, was established as a multi-ethnic and multi-religious forces, which includes the YPG, the YPJ, the Syriac Christian Military Council, the Arab Sanadid forces, and others. The SDF managed to liberate more land from ISIS, and local civil administrations were built in the newly liberated regions. In order to coordinate between the 7 local administrations of Jazeera, Euphrates, Afrin, Manbij, Tabqa, Raqqa, and Deir ez-Zor, the Autonomous Administration of North and East of Syria, AANES, was established in September 2018. In addition to gender equality and ecology, the AANES is characterized by its inclusivity. And I would like to give now some concrete examples that show the participation of the diverse communities in the project of North and East of Syria. First, the SDF is composed of a coalition of diverse ethnic and religious military organizations, which fought and bled together against ISIS, such as the Syriac Military Council, the Arab Sanadid forces, and the military councils in the Arab regions of Raqqa, Tabqa, Manbij, and Deir ez-Zor. And of course, my colleague Kino has elaborated on this point. Second, the ANES has 3 official languages, the Kurdish, Arabic, and the Aramaic. Each community freely practices their cultural activities and celebrates their own national days and religious holidays. Third, the school curriculum is written in 3 languages to allow each ethnic group to use their mother tongue in education. Fourth, the ANES applies the quota system for the small ethnic and religious groups to ensure their participation and representation in the decision-making bodies. The percentage of the quota varies depending on the population in each region. Fifth, the administrative system of the AANES is based on decentralization, where the local people in each of the 7 local administrations which comprises the AANES run their own affairs and choose their own representatives in the communes and councils. 6. When the YPG and YPJ expelled the regime from the 3 Kurdish regions of Jazeera, Kobani, and Afrin, Rojava was the official name of this territory. However, with the liberation of some Arab regions from ISIS, the official name was changed, and our project is now known as the Autonomous Administration of North and East of Syria, AANES, which indicates that the project is not ethnic, but could be proposed as a model of governance for all Syria in the future. 7. One of the remarkable achievements that the AANES is proud of is building a place where Christians, Yazidis, and other religious groups can freely practice their own faith without fear of persecution, which is unique in the Middle East, where sectarian violence prevails and religious intolerance is widely spread. As USERF, US Commission for International Religious Freedom, and others have documented, the AANES now has the best religious freedom and gender equality conditions in the Middle East. We created a model of governance that is inclusive to all religious components, Syriac, Assyrians, Armenians, Yazidis, and others. 8, there is a fair distribution of administrative posts among the diverse ethnic and religious groups. For example, as my friend Kino Gabriel noted as well, the Foreign Relations Department in North and East of Syria is headed by 2 co-chairs, a Kurdish man and an Arab woman. And they have 2 deputies, a Syriac Christian woman and an Arab man. So the distribution of positions in the civil and military institutions take into consideration the fair representation of all ethnic and religious groups, as well as women whose participation must not be less than 40% by law. After the SDF inflicted territorial defeat on ISIS, the Turkish threats began to increase due to the success of this project in providing protection and freedom for all the people of North and East Syria, and preserving the cultural identities of the diverse communities. In January 2018, Turkey and the so-called Syrian National Army, which comprises of extremist Islamist groups, invaded Afrin, committing atrocious crimes against civilians and forcibly displacing 300,000 Kurds from their homes. In October 2019, Turkey and its affiliated radical groups conducted another incursion and occupied the regions of Tel Abyad and Serikani, committing the same crimes as they did in Afrin. The UN report of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Syria, issued on 14 September 2020, as well as many other reports by independent organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have documented that Turkey and its radical militias committed horrific crimes against ethnic and religious minorities in the regions they occupy in North and East Syria, including killings, kidnapping, rape, extortion, destruction of religious and archaeological sites, and forced conversion, among other crimes as well. The vast majorities of the Yazidis and Christians who were forced to leave the areas occupied by Turkey and its extremist militias in Afrin and Serikani sought refuge in the regions under AANES, which clearly shows that the AANES project has become a sanctuary for all religious groups in the region. Therefore, the Autonomous Administration Project of North and East of Syria needs to be supported and recognized if we want to ensure that the indigenous people of our region stay on their homeland. And thank you.
Okay, that's indeed quite a testimony, and absolutely you demonstrated the unique diversity and pluralism that we have in Northeast Syria. Maybe already, and then I now immediately leave the door open for a lot of questions from the audience, but let me start immediately with the first one. And since Mr. Gabriel mentioned also the educational system, my first question will be maybe towards him, and you, Mr. Hassan, please complete if necessary. So I can imagine the social project of Northeast Syria is confronted with different aspects, not only the multi-ethnic and religious, but also with the linguistic aspects. Now, how is this translated into the educational system? So I can imagine that you need in region to develop an open educational system that respects the cultural diversity and the linguistic aspects. So in this case, is that working? Are there difficulties, or is it going on? Mr. Kino Gabriel, maybe this question is for you for the first.
Basically, I think I'm going to say that the educational system with the different linguistic diversity that we have, let's say, it's working in some way in a good way. So basically, we started with the creation of a new curriculum for the administration of North and East Syria. This curriculum is provided in the three main languages, which are Arabic, Kurdish, and Syriac. Each student is going to learn in his mother language, in his native language. So the Arabs are going to learn basically in Arabic, the Kurds in Kurdish, and the Syriacs are going to be learning in Syriac. Later, I think starting from, if I am correct, starting from fourth grade, each student is going to choose another language to learn it. So basically, the Arabs are going to choose either Kurdish or Syriac. The Syriacs are going to choose either Kurdish or Arabic in order to learn it as a second language. And I think is going to be provided for at least 4 years. And the next 4 years, they are going to learn the other language. So basically, eventually in 8 years of learning after the fourth grade, those students are going to learn the three different languages of the administration. So basically, so far, I think that was the original project, and that was the plan that was set from the administration. Fortunately, I think so far we haven't been able to monitor how it was implemented fully, because the curriculum is only like 4 or 5 years into the making, and it hasn't been so much for it to be implemented as the plan that was put for it. So I think we would need few more years in order to be able to observe the actual results of it. But basically, we started to see that a lot of the children, a lot of the youth are learning different languages, and again with some difficulties, but I think eventually it's working in relatively in a good way. I think what we need is, or at least regarding the information that we have, what is needed is better training for the teachers that we have here, better let's say, creation of this method and the ability for the team to present it in a better way for the children in the school. So I think that is something that that is under the work of the administration, basically the education ministry or the education body. And I think they are doing so far a relatively good job, but again, I think it's just the lack of experience that eventually would allow us to, after we accumulate it, it would allow us to, I think, present a generation that knows different languages, which knows the official languages of the area. And I think that is eventually is going to open new doors for the relation of those groups, because those children are going to lead this community eventually, and each one of them is going to have a better understanding of the other communities, the other groups. So the Syriac is going to have better understanding of the Kurdish and Arab community, and eventually that is going to help in solving the historic problems that we have against each other as groups, and to overcome those problems, and I think continue in a better future or better relations among those groups.
Okay, yeah, fully agree on that one. Maybe Mr. Hassan, would you like to add something to this question? If so, please.
Yeah, I believe, you know, despite all the challenges that we face in implementing the three language curriculum, of course, I mean, when we first applied it, we face a lot of challenges because, you know, lack of experience. It's difficult to have, you know, a curriculum in 3 languages, but we managed to overcome all these challenges because, you know, the diverse, you know, ethnic groups in north and east of Syria, they have been denied their rights to practice and use their mother tongue in education. So it's really, I mean, important to see this diversity in the region. And maybe, as my colleague Kino also said, in the elementary level, the students learn 3 languages, the 3 main languages, and then of course they proceed with their native mother tongue. But I mean, until now, as of course we all know that we managed to create this curriculum. It's been quite a success. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. The people who are in charge of education in north and east of Syria are doing their best to address these challenges. So hopefully the situation will improve in the future, and hopefully, and what is really most importantly, that the certificates that are given by the administration will one day be recognized and be accredited. Because until now, this is also one of the problems that we face. A lot of the Kurds, even in our region, they say that, you know, yes, our children are learning in Kurdish, which we have always looked for, but unfortunately, the certificates that they get, even when they finish, for example, they graduate from Rojava University, those certificates are not accredited, whether in Syria or internationally. So hopefully we can manage this.
I fully agree. Yes, the accreditation will be very important, without any doubt. So once more for the main, I have other questions, but people don't hesitate, raise your hand. Meanwhile, I will already ask another question, because like you came to mention the accreditation, but now when it comes more to the recognition of the countries, particularly coming from abroad. So we've seen there are the region is facing many threats, such as Turkey, the thing that happened recently in Qamishli, even from the Assad regime. And the regime of Assad works closely together with Russia. Then now you have, it seems that, okay, when we talk about here, the European Union, there's little to expect from that part. And then when it comes to the USA, well, maybe that the new administration of President Biden brings some hope. But okay, what is currently for you people the current impact of this geopolitical situation on the region? Can you please answer on that one?
Yeah, please, Kino, my friend.
No, it doesn't matter, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you could put...
You are responsible for foreign affairs. It's your job.
Okay. So just to get more clarification from you, Eric, your precise question was about,
yes.
If you could rephrase your question.
I will rephrase it indeed. Well, I just came to mention the complete geopolitical situation with especially the power forces. When you mention Russia, that is going along with the Assad regime, that's for sure. Then you have the situation, like I mentioned, the European Union is not doing a lot of things, and there's little to expect from that part. You have the USA, maybe with the new administration of President Biden, that you will have maybe some opportunities. We will see what comes out from there, like we see what happened for Armenia, the recognition of the genocide. But in its whole, what is the situation currently now? We see recently things happened in Kamishli. So there are threats. But what is for you now the major threat, and what are the challenges when it comes to this complete mess of political situation? When we look at it from here, it's a very difficult situation. It's real a mess, if you understand my question and my remark.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really, it's, I mean, we have a lot of challenges in this region, as you mentioned. Of course, what happened recently in Kamishli have finished, you know. Now our local internal security forces, the SIH, managed to wrest control over this the neighborhood, and the situation is normal now. The services is back to this neighborhood. But in general, of course, when we talk about the general situation in the region, I agree with you. There are a lot of challenges. Turkey on the one hand, and its affiliated groups, as well as, of course, the Syrian regime. The U.S. position is not, until now, is not so clear regarding, you know, the situation here, our project. But we have seen some changes, you know, especially after the inauguration of Biden's administration. There are some signs of more engagement with with our project, with the autonomous administration project. It's not enough, of course. Of course, what adds to all these problems is the economic crisis which the north and east of Syria suffered from. Due, of course, to the sanctions that are imposed on the Syrian regime, which also affects our region, and also due to the spread of COVID-19, this also made the economic situation in our region very bad, you know. But in general, we hope that in the next few years the situation could improve. And we should, of course, do our best, you know, and be vigilant regarding these challenges. And of course, this is geography. We cannot change the geography of north and east of Syria. We are surrounded by countries that are not happy to see this project, you know, succeeding. So, I mean, on our side, we have always sought good neighborly relations with our neighbors, and we have always tried to explain and show the others that our project really is the best solution to overcome the crisis in Syria and even in the Middle East, you know, because of the structural crises that the Middle East is suffering from. You know, due to this mentality of nation state and, you know, the spread of sectarianism and religionism. So in this case, we believe that we have a project that is based on sound principles and values, and that we should continue our struggle to be able to make this project recognized internationally, despite, of course, the challenges. But we trust that one day, hopefully soon, our project will be recognized and will be considered as a model for the future of Syria.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I will really, together with you, hope so indeed. Mr. Gabriel, how do you consider a situation? Is there some improvement on that level that you see coming towards the region?
Well, I think basically it's safe to say that it's not the matter of change, but again, the world situation for Syria in general and for the Middle East basically is still unknown for big parts of it. So we can see the change in the making happening all over the area, starting from Northern Africa to the Middle East here, to other places. But again, if we take it just for Syria, it always seems to be that there is a pause in the foreign relations and the programs for especially the countries and the governments who are involved with the situation in Syria, especially the US, Russia, and those, I think, basically who are the main characters who can change the situation on the ground, and their hesitancy or to move or to be active, and especially the US, let's say, and in some part for Europe, as they are or they have presence within North and East Syria. And I think basically they are those who we are waiting for to defend the change towards democracy in the region. And it seems that they have a pause regarding their policies about Syria. And eventually that opens the door for other actors such as Russia, Turkey, Iran to be more effective or to be more active within the area or within Syria in order for them to assure their benefits and to assure their let's say interest within Syria. And that is eventually leaves the Syrian people vulnerable for their agreements, vulnerable for their disagreements, and eventually not knowing what is going to happen in the future. As Mr. Muhammad said, eventually I think there are always good signs. So I'll give an example for it. So we had good signs back in, let's say, July and August 2019 from the international coalition, from the US administration regarding the security mechanism for the borders. And let's say 2 months later, we had Turkey intervening directly within Syria and the US pulling out. So we always have those good signs, and they are always good to have them. But again, we don't know how it's going to change and what's the change is going to look like, and how it is going to affect basically our situation and the whole Syrian situation. And I think that is due to this pause within the policies made basically by Europe and the US regarding Syria. So they don't have active policies in the making within Syria, and they are just reacting to the actions of other actors who are involved in Syria. And that is, I think, eventually bad for the future of the Syrian people, for the future that needs to be built within Syria. And I think it's bad for the promises made by the European and the US governments back in 2011 and 2012 for a better Syria that is going to be respectful and in dignity for the Syrian people. So I think what we need is a clear policy that we really can rely on. And I think we have been, or we have proven, whether it is the administration of North and East Syria, the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, or all of us, all the different actors of North and East Syria, we have proven that we are, I think, worthy of this let's say, coordination or joint work that we can do together along with the US, along with Europe, with the whole international coalition. We have defeated together ISIS, and I think together we can build a new government for Syria eventually that is going to be the best, I think, model of respect, pluralism, women's rights, religious rights, and I think basically the best example of democratic government for Syria. And I think it's just one step that those governments need to take toward us in order to move with this project or any other project that eventually going to support this inclusivity, these different groups, these different ideas that the Syrian people have, and eventually implement them in a good way.
Yes. But did I quite understand you well if you say that the current model that you have within the autonomous administration, that you would like to extend it and expose it towards the complete Syrian government? And if so, how did you plan to do that? In a diplomatic way, or did I misunderstood something? For the future,
No,
I mean.
I think it's correct. Basically, we have always been talking about how we see the democratic administration project or experience, a model for other parts of Syria. And I already mentioned it in my first part, that eventually each area of Syria is very similar to what we have, let's say, here in Jazeera or in Kobani or in Manbij or in even Raqqa and Deir or so. We have always in each part of Syria different groups living together, working together, and again, they have problems. So they can eventually govern over themselves. So it's basically, it's not very different, or I'm not going to say that, sorry. So basically, it's not something unheard of for Syria. So basically, we have, during the regime control, we had a local government law, and it's supposed to have a local government for each part of Syria, for each governorate. But the problem that we had before is all those governorates were run by the security forces, and they were just not able to do the work, or they were not representative of the different groups within living in those governorates. They were always governed by the central government from Damascus. So why not implement this project and this idea in different parts? Let's take Homs. Again, we have Kurds in Homs. I think in some part we have a bigger population of Syriacs and Christians. Again, we have Arabs. Within the Arab community, we have the Sunnis, we have the Alawites. So again, we have this diverse, let's say, community. Again, they can come together and they can form their own government within their own circumstances and be part of the democratic administration of all Syria, not only North and East Syria. So why not eventually?
Sure. And just a last question on that matter, on that topic, did the administration already had, or people from the administration, first contacts with the Syrian government on that level, or on that topic?
Let's say, I think it's again better for Mr. Hassan to answer it. I think they were involved more in those, let's say, talkings, and basically we had contact with the Syrian government, and there were some, let's say, agreements to have dialogue and to have some kind of negotiation. But to my knowledge, it didn't start officially yet. But I think Mr. Hassan maybe would have better answer, better information regarding the situation.
Yes, yeah.
Answering your question about the project of the autonomous administration and the possibility of applying this project in different regions of Syria, I agree with my friend Mr. Kino Gabriel that this project can be applied in all parts of Syria, because the diversity, whether ethnically or of course, or religious diversity is there in the different regions of Syria. And actually, this is the project of the Syrian Democratic Council. The Syrian Democratic Council is a group of political parties and organizations that believe in a decentralized, pluralistic, and democratic Syria. This is the project of the Syrian Democratic Council, and they are working on this. They are working to apply and to promote awareness among the diverse Syrian communities of the importance of applying such a model of governance in different regions. This would be the best solution. Regarding the communication with the Syrian regime, it happened, the Syrian Democratic Council made some meetings or held some meetings, but of course the Syrian regime has not shown any willingness to dialogue with our representatives in this region. There were like 2 rounds of meetings, but unfortunately these meetings were not productive. The Syrian regime was still held the same mentality, the mentality of before 2011, and is unwilling to show any change in the structure of its political system.
Yeah, okay, well, that's indeed an unfortunate. Okay, so far for that question, still the people are ready. If people are willing to ask questions, they can do. Still, I have one on the level. Oh well, since the introduction that came from Mr. Kino Gabriel, at a certain moment you mentioned the fact that new elections were upcoming. I think if I understood it well, it was in 2021. So what does that? What is going to be the impact of that? I mean, in terms of will it eventually go into a new type of social contract and a modified social contract? Maybe this is a question indeed for both of you. Please.
Yeah. If I were to answer this question, I would say for sure we are planning to hold elections, but I believe that the date is not set yet. But yeah, there was a lot of talks that it could be held, by the end of this year. But still, the date was not set, and yeah, I mean the reason for this election, it will be the first time. It's not new election. It will be the first time the elections are to be held in this region. We tried before, and we did some local elections on the commune level, on the council level, but because of the Turkish invasion, that election stopped. We wanted to make elections on higher level, on the federal level, but the federal project in 2017 was stopped because of the Turkish invasion and threats. And this is why we postponed the election. So hopefully we are going to hold it soon.
Okay, and will that be something for the local councils or also on the regional level, or is that the complete trapped system of governance that will be impacted by these elections?
I think the plan is to have like the complete system, not only on the lower level of like the councils or communes, or it will cover all the different levels, the higher levels as well. And the social contract, of course, the core values of the social contract will not change, like with regard to the gender equality, ecology, and inclusiveness. These things will remain the same, but maybe there could be some small modifications after the dialogue that could happen, because as Mr. Kino said, there were some rounds of talks between the diverse ethnic and religious groups, like the meeting of Jazeera and Euphrates. These are the two regions of north and east of Syria. So the result was that there were some recommendations to increase the representation, mainly in the Arab regions, and I believe that, in the Arab regions, especially in Deir ez-Zor, the people, some tribes there are reluctant to participate because they are afraid, of the changes that could happen. The Russians and the Syrian regime are below the river, very close to them. So they are afraid of the consequences of participating in the administration. The administration is not recognized yet. There are the Turkish threats, the regime, and the Iranian as well. So this is why some Arab tribes are undecided regarding their participation in this project.
Yes, for sure. That was indeed one of the reasons. Well, it was the reason for my question, of course. I mean, I can imagine that it's all about the recognition of these elections. Is there something you, Mr. Gabriel, you would add to that?
Well, basically, I think I don't have anything to add for it. It's just eventually I think it's something needed because basically the was a democratic representation, and as Mr. Hassan mentioned, we started the administration in 2014, and eventually there was this need to have the elections, and we started it in 2017 and stopped later because of the Turkish intervention in Afrin back in 2018, and later the administration of North and East Syria was created, and it didn't have the time to start elections, and because again later we had attacks from Turkey again, we had the operations against ISIS, and eventually everything came together or for each other in a way that prevented us from doing it. And basically, I think it was, the local community who demanded that there is this need to have elections, there is this need to have inclusivity in a better way, and they are working on it. I think there are some committees following this situation. And as for the matter of, let's say, the social contract, eventually there is this need to change it a little. Change because but to develop what we had before, because the original social contract was written back in 2014, and it was written in a way to represent people living in 3 different areas of Jazeera, Kobani, and Afrin, and now we have a very different situation, very different demographic community, and I think the social contract should represent all those changes and should be able to represent the ideas of those different groups who have joined the administration, to represent all the parts of the administration, because as I said again, we started with 3 regional governments, and now we have 7 governments, and we need to organize all of this stuff, and that is, I think, the need to develop the social contract and have it in a way to better represent everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I really understand. I think we were almost at the end of the questionnaire I had, and maybe with all the things that you just came to, both of you as speaker came to explain to us. A lot of things have been said also about possible threats and challenges where you're still facing with or faced with. But finally, my final question would be to both of you. What could be your hopes and dreams for the future of Northeast Syria? And I can imagine you have some.
Yeah. For me, I really look forward, to seeing Northeast Syria as a multi-ethnic and multi-religious place where people's rights and this diversity is, given its real position in our society, and it become deeply rooted in our culture. I also look forward to see Northeast Syria as a place where the diverse ethnic and religious groups, the Christians, Arabs, Kurds, live together in peace, which is really something new, unfortunately, in most of the Arab or most of the regional countries. As I said, because of the spread of sectarian and ethnic violence in the region. So I look forward to see our project being recognized internationally, and also to see all like religious groups and ethnic groups such as like the Armenian, and we all know what happened to the Armenian people and the genocide that they have, saw at the beginning of the previous century. The Syriac Christians, those, mosaic group of communities that enriches our society, enriches my culture as a Kurd. I would like to see them, participating more effectively. And I would like also to see, the others who immigrated and went to the diaspora to come back and also participate in building our region, so that we can live together just like in the past. We can live together to build a new future for our generation, based on love, on tolerance, and on peace.
Oops, those are the most beautiful words we could end this presentation with, of course, but I would maybe, of course, leave the final word to you, Mr. Gabriel. Can you do even better than that?
I'm not daring to say anything, not to look as good as him. Eventually, I think he represents everything that we are working for. Of course, Mr. Hassan is a friend of mine, and we have done, I think, a lot of work together, and we have shared a lot of ideas. So eventually, I think I'm not going to say something different from what we have. But what I hope for is really an opportunity to have this dream that we had about Syria to come to truth, and to be able to see it, and to be able to build this Syrian community that we are always talking about. And I think that is something that we can do, I think, to some level by ourselves. But again, I am hoping for, and I think every one of us is hoping for support, is hoping for some help from our friends. I think we have a lot of friends from Europe, from the US, from every democratic nation in the international community, in order to support us, to show us some kind of the way that would provide us and lead us to this future that we want for Syria. As I said, we are talking about inclusivity, we are talking about religious freedom, etc. We have it here, and I think we are eager to have more experience and to share what we have with those groups, and with them also move towards a better future for Syria eventually.
Okay, those both from your very nice words that I heard, and to be quite honest, I'm very eager to visit once the region. Of course, I never have the opportunity or had the opportunity to do so, but I think it's really, for me, it's quite a challenge that I want to do within the future, and maybe together with my president we will do so. We already discussed that. Okay, anyway, I once more thank you. Thanks a lot for your contribution, for these testimonies that we got from both of you. It was very nice. It was very enriching, and I think I can talk to the audience now by ending saying the following, where we were at the third session of this of the seminars and the webinars we are going to do and already did for Rojava in terms of the society model over there. There will be three upcoming. And we will keep you, of course, informed via our website and with all the details and the speakers. So to the audience, to the speakers, I wish you all, I wish to thank you everybody and wish you a very nice evening with the beautiful words that ended and came from Mr. Mohammed Hassan and Kino Gabriel. Thanks all.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to see you and representatives of the Koerdisch Institute in north and east of Syria, so that you can see what's going on the ground.
Surely do, and I invite all the participants to do the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.